Hello and welcome to Hot Roster today, or should I say, Cam Stewart, Gary and Thorne. Hot Roster yesterday. We are breaking down all the action that we saw during Week 6 of the NFL season. Also going to get to a couple of NHL cards on the Hot Roster docket tonight, so stick around for that. But first, we do have to get through a lot of football, as it was a very interesting Week 6 in the NFL.
You got a bounce in your step there, Gary. And how about those Dolphins? I guess they count now.
Those Dolphins.
Sorry.
You know what? It's kind of interesting. It's through 6 games so far this season, they've managed to injure the opposing starting quarterback 3 times, and have still only actually won one of those games. So it's interesting. But as you mentioned too, survivor purposes.
That's what I'm talking.
This
I'm
has
talking
been
about
very
my survivor.
interesting.
I was on the Bills, and everybody else. A lot of people were on Pittsburgh, so I'm loving it right now. Thank you, and the Dolphins.
Absolutely no problem. And one of the big reasons for that win was the injury to Ben Roethlisberger, and we found out today that it is actually a partially torn meniscus in his knee. Initially, we thought this could be very, very serious. Turns out, though, at least Pro Football Talk is reporting that it's only going to require a cleanup type surgery, and they expect that he could be back after their Week 8 bye. Now, obviously, they do have a game before that Week 8 bye. Unfortunately for Steelers fans and anyone who hates the New England Patriots, it's against the New England Patriots. And Landry Jones is going to start that game. So I guess from a season-long perspective, we can talk about it a little bit, but Roethlisberger likely will be back again Week 9. Week 7, though, what does that do for the fantasy prospects of every other skill position player on the Steelers?
Well, looking at it from a hot roster perspective, you might want to go against these guys, right, Gary? Because if you look at Antonio Brown, look at you break down the numbers from 2015 with Ben, 9.9 receptions down to 4.3, targets 13.3 down to 7.8, yards per game 133.8, 58. What about touchdowns? 10-0.
Yeah.
Like, these are huge discrepancies right now. It's going to hurt Coates. It's going to hurt Antonio Brown. It might help Le'Veon Bell, because I can tell you one thing, they're going to be handing off the ball quite a bit.
Yeah, but the one interesting thing about that is we saw this in the second half of that game against the Dolphins, where I sort of said this was my storyline for the Dolphins coming into that game, but you have to have the ball to do anything in fantasy, and the Steelers just couldn't string together plays. They could not string together drives, and the Dolphins, to their credit, ran 68 plays in that game. That was a team averaging 52 plays a game coming into Week 6, so they just had the time of possession in their hands. Now, Jay Ajayi, who we'll talk about in a second, was a big part of that as well, but you look at Landry Jones, nothing really inspiring about this guy.
No.
I will say that if you look at his average depth of target, he and Michael Vick, even last season, in the stead of Ben Roethlisberger, they were trying to take shots. It's not like they were checking down all the time. They were trying to go to Antonio Brown, but the quality of ball, obviously just not there. So I think Brown will likely still get his. I'm going to say he's still a wide receiver 1 heading into Week 7.
The numbers got to regress, though.
Yeah, it's just the upside is not quite where it was with Roethlisberger. It's unfortunate, too, because that was a home game for the Steelers, and regardless of matchup, they are so good at Heinz Field. I think you're right, though. If anyone were to benefit, and I don't even know if I want to use the word benefit, because Le'Veon Bell is basically got the highest ceiling of any running back any week, but he is a guy who could see more volume in this offense.
Oh, big time.
But whether or not they're running 75 plays or 55 plays, that's going to be very important to watch out for. So I mentioned Jay Ajayi and how well he did in that contest.
I have him in every fantasy league, Gary.
On your bench.
That was the best. Charles or Ajayi? Charles. I'm going, oh my God, but no one saw this one coming. This is nuts.
I mean, you look at all of the numbers. I mean, this is a guy who's been a backup mostly for his time in the NFL, a season and a half right now, but more fantasy points in that one game than he scored all of last season. 204 yards, 2 touchdowns on 25 carries, just the second Dolphin running back ever.
The rushes are going up, though. Even if you look at the last couple weeks, he had 13 and then 25. Before that, 5, 7, and 6. So when I look at also watching the game, you see Arian Foster. He's hurt all the time. He's in the huddle. He's out. What are they going to do? They also have a couple rookie backs back there. So this is great news for Ajayi. If you want to take the reins, this is where you do it, because the Dolphins running back, the situation, it's kind of, don't you think it's already cloudy?
It's very cloudy. I mean, as you mentioned,
banged up.
They've got a ton of guys, and you got to expect that Foster, he only played 11 snaps in that game. It was kind of a question I know that I was asking in the first and second quarter, because they made such a big deal of saying that Foster is going to, he's going to warm up pregame. We're going to see how he feels. We're going to see let that dictate if he's playing or not. They didn't let this guy see the field until a red zone snap late in the second quarter, and it was almost like, if you're not going to use him, why even waste a roster spot on this guy? They dressed 4 running backs in that game, Cam. You mentioned Damian Williams.
He was getting some touches.
And he's got an established role with the Dolphins. He's been in this organization for 3-4 years now. Now, that might not matter because Adam Gase is a new head coach, just a first-year coach, and really a guy who we saw coming into this week for the Dolphins. I mean, they had cut a couple offensive linemen, veteran guys who had started some games for this team, and it seemed like the philosophy Gase was having was, I don't care who's more talented or who's got more run or who's got more reputation in this league. I need guys who are going to do it right now. And Ajayi was someone who seemed to be in the doghouse early, but after
Not
a
anymore.
200-yard performance, you'd have to think. So I think going forward, I know 5.7 yards per carry. All of a sudden, he leads all running backs with 30-plus carries and yards per carry.
4 touchdowns in his last 4, too. So he's getting in the end zone, too. It's not just about the yards.
But even those 11 touches and plays, not touches, 5 touches for Foster, 11 snaps, 4 of the 5 came in the red zone. So I think as he gets healthier, and you mentioned he could just get hurt at any point. He get hurt in practice this week.
But they want to give the veteran the ball.
He's
going to
be worked in a little bit more as this goes along. So I'm going to say you missed the ceiling game with Jay Ajayi, but it's going to be a mess in Miami, as it always is with that backfield. Very crowded backfield. Marcus Mariota, someone who had a big week against the Dolphins in Week 5, actually was the #1 fantasy quarterback that week, Cam. Third highest scoring quarterback of Week 6, only behind Drew Brees. That makes a lot of sense.
And he went wild.
And Case Keenum.
Well, we didn't see that one
I think we
coming
learned that the Detroit Lions pass defense is matchup proof.
Yep.
It is bad. Play any quarterback. The one thing about Mariota, it's not even just the passing touchdowns, the passing yards. Those last 2 games, 14 carries for 124 yards on the ground. If he's going to run like this, Cam, and give you that floor, is he a QB1 as crazy as that sounds?
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. You talked about it. So he had 34 rushes in 2015, 252 yards and a touchdown. He's already got 196. We're not even close to the. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This guy's going to blow it up. Plus, the last couple weeks, over 60 yards in both games rushing with a touchdown. So he's doing it with his legs, too. Lots of positive matchups against weak teams. Yes, I think you have to look at him as a QB1.
They do have a very good schedule because of that poor finish they had last year.
Exactly.
So, and that's important because you look at those last 2 games, it is very important to note they came against the Dolphins and the Browns, 2 of the worst pass defenses in football, 2 top 10 against fantasy points.
His numbers are the same. 7. It's hilarious too. They're almost mirrored. 7.4 yards a carry, 7.3 this year too. So he's getting it done.
I will say that I'm not someone who, and sometimes the eye test and fantasy don't always match up. But you watch Marcus Mariota play. It's not always the most inspiring. Even in that game yesterday, he had a weird one where he rolled out to his right, threw across his body across the field. It was picked by the Browns.
Yep. He did the same thing against the Vikings Week 1. He got burned on those. They were pick sixes.
So he's still aesthetically maybe not the most pleasing quarterback in the world. I will say the floor there with the rushing yards is really nice. Yeah. I wouldn't say he's a QB1 yet, but I feel like we're in this sort of range right now with fantasy where if a guy isn't one of the top 6 or 7 consensus quarterbacks.
True. And then
there's this whole tier of like 12 guys. So if he's got a great matchup, sure, roll him out there. But he's not someone you need to start against the Vikings, for instance, or even the Patriots or something like that. So I would caution QB1.
You're right, though. That's the one thing I've noticed, even in like all the fantasy leagues, other than like Brady and a couple of top tier guys, roll the dice.
Just roll the
Everyone's
dice and stream some guys.
The same.
I would agree. Speaking of Tom Brady, he has been back for 2 weeks, and Cam, we need to ask the question after Rob Gronkowski put up a career best 162 yards yesterday. We go back a couple years, the Aaron Hernandez days. People don't like to talk about that so much in New England.
No.
But Martellus Bennett scores 3 touchdowns against the Browns in Week 5. Can these 2 guys coexist? Can they both be viable fantasy tight ends with Brady?
I think they can. I know Gronk went off, but don't you think Bennett, he had the 3 touchdown game? And the thing about Brady, it's just that's what he does. He throws to tight end. So even if Gronk's going to get his, Martellus Bennett's still getting some second half touches in the game, Gary. Yeah. And when you look at other tight ends, he's still going to be more productive. There's plenty of food to go around in the New England. New England's like a Thanksgiving dinner. Just there's so much pie on the table. There's so much turkey. Give. And Tom Brady, 6 touchdowns and no interceptions. All the tight ends and James White.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So they're not running the ball in right now. They're throwing it all over the place. So I think both can coexist.
And I think they might be the 2 best skill position players they have. I mean, not taking anything away from Julian Edelman, but he's a Brady creation as well.
Exactly.
Chris Hogan's running their deep routes. Like, they don't have the most skilled wide receivers. So right now you talk about I think the key thing you said was compared to other tight ends. Tight end sucks. Like, that's just what you have to say. And I think that right now you look at those 2 weeks with Brady, only 8 tight ends, Cam. Total over 100 yards receiving in those 2 games. Both Gronk and Martellus Bennett crested 100 yards. Bennett's going to be a red zone target. I think both of these guys can be viable fantasy tight ends. Just the way it works.
That's the way it goes in New England, buddy.
There's enough to go around, as Cam said. We come back on Hot Roster today. Hot Roster yesterday. We're going to break down the matchup, some of the cards from Week 8, and see if we were right or wrong.
We did pretty good, I think.
We did okay. I think we did okay.
We did all right.
We'll talk about it when we come back.